What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to XJW Diaries. My name is Justin. So today I have another special interview for you guys. This time with someone who has become a good friend. You may recognize her from the Life After Jehovah's Witnesses documentary. In this video, she's going to go much deeper into her story. And trigger warning, her story does have to do a lot with abuse. But there's much more to it than that. She talks about the mental conditioning and just the overall guilt and pressure that you live under as a Jehovah's Witness and how much that can impact you, especially as a child. So I really hope you guys enjoy her story. And there's a lot of times throughout her story where she says things in such a way that it's things that a lot of us as witnesses felt at one time or another, but just weren't able to put into words. And I'm sure many of you will be able to relate to a lot of those things. So this is Jen's story. Well, thank you, Jen, for coming onto the channel, being willing to tell your story for the benefit of helping others. So we'll start with the first question. How did you get involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? Were you raised in it? How did you get involved?
Thank you, Justin, for having me. I was raised in it since I was about a year old. My parents were teenage parents. My mom had me when she was 16, and they both came from abusive alcoholic families and big families. They were one of 6 kids in each of them, and they moved to Alaska. My dad was in the military, and somebody was knocking on the door, and that's how my mom got in. She was baptized when she was in Alaska, and then after my dad finished his tour, he got baptized in Idaho whenever he got out. And we lived about an hour away from the Kingdom Hall, so it was about a 2-hour commute. And then we had the meetings 3 days a week. We tried to make them all, but I think we made maybe 1 to 2 meetings a week. So we didn't have any really close friends in the congregations. As a kid, I'd get bored. I would go out in service with other people. I enjoyed that. I really did like knocking on the doors and trying to talk to people about Jehovah. And at school, I was a good student. I really enjoyed school. My mom, because she wasn't very close to her mom, she had a hard time. She kept a distance, but she gave everything that she could. She tried, but you could tell just it was a very she loved me with everything she had, but she didn't know how to love. So I think she tries harder now that she's an adult. But when she was a kid, raising a kid, it was lonely. So I did have neighbors that kept an eye on me all the time. And my mom worked until the graveyard shifts. She was a baker. And so we would go, while she was sleeping, we'd go outside of the house. We grew up in the 90s, and you just roamed until sun came, or until dark, so until the sun was about to set. So I did have worldly friends, neighbors that kind of kept up on us, and they had a Christmas tree. I remember the holidays at their house, and I loved their Christmas tree, but I would never touch it. They would have tinsel that would fall off the ground, and I'd sneak over there and put a couple pieces of tinsel up on the tree. But that was only because it fell, and I still felt really guilty for that. But it was a secret little indulgence.
Do you feel, was it tough being a child, being under that much guilt that, even just putting something that fell back onto the Christmas tree kind of irked at you? How was that growing up under that much guilt?
Guilt was normal. Like, that is all I understood. Like, if I was not feeling guilty about something, then I must be being selfish or something. I don't know. Not watching what I do enough, because I didn't know any other way. But I do know, like, those moments when she, like the neighbor's mom, when she would do kind things for me or look away and tell me it's okay to do things like that, I felt very comforted that way. I had a teacher one time that in first grade, she made me an Easter basket. And she told me to just not tell anybody. And that was like so touching to me because it was okay with me not doing the holiday things at school, just because I really wanted to please Jehovah. But when people did a little act of kindness, I kind of felt like that was just extra love. I don't know. I'm a rule breaker. So when the adults let me break rules, I don't know. It always gave me a sense of camaraderie, maybe. I don't know.
So
So
was it was sorry, but was it confusing to have because at the Kingdom Hall we're told that these worldly people are bad, they're evil people, they're doomed for destruction.
it
So
was.
how
It
was
was.
it being, yeah, hearing
Yeah.
that at the Kingdom Hall, but then you experienced this love from them? What was that like?
That was really confusing because I'm like, how on earth are they going to die? And I remember talking to my parents at night, like, they are such good, kind people. Are you sure Jehovah's going to destroy them? They don't have the opportunity to learn. And I was always told they were used by Satan to lure you away from Jehovah. And I guess I could see that point because they made me want to have Christmas and made me want to celebrate Easter. But it was very confusing because they were kind to me. But also it made it to where I didn't trust everybody completely. So I was on guard, and I had to put on a facade too, because I was a little bit more into doing things I shouldn't be doing, but I wanted everybody to think that I was doing a really good job. It made it really hard because I didn't want anybody to know that I secretly wanted to celebrate the holidays because I wanted to be strong for Jehovah. But then when they let me do it, it was kind of, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but it did make it harder for me to tell them things that were going on because I didn't ever want to bring reproach on God's name or my parents. And I know that there were times growing up when I was little, neighbors would see bruises on me, and I would always protect what happened. I would be guarded. I would never tell anybody about why I have bruises all over my body or anything like that. So I didn't, because they wouldn't understand our teachings and our practices because about us not sparing the rod and things like that. So I don't know. It did make it harder to trust them for that.
Yeah, it's normalized in the Kingdom Halls. I mean,
There's a lot
it really is.
normalized.
Yeah. You mean you're at any normal meeting, and then if there's a little kid in the congregation, it's almost expected that at some point during that meeting, you're going to hear that kid being dragged off to the restroom, a bunch of crying, and everybody knows what's happening.
Yeah.
But it's normalized.
My
It's sad.
brother and I would always fight over the armrest. And so that's what would normally get me back in the back room because I would try to take that armrest. And if he wouldn't do it, I'd pinch him sometimes. So yeah, we'd be going in the back room and we've
And
had to
it's
stand.
sad. It's sad because what you're describing is just normal child behavior.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
kids should not be expected to. Yeah, for 2 hours.
for 2 hours
Yeah,
talking about things that just go completely over your head. It's
yeah,
hard enough to even have in my careers, like for children, we didn't put them in front of TVs. We always felt like that the frequencies harm their brains, and so even having somebody sit down for a half an hour to do like an interactive story time is really, really hard. So having a kid do that for 2 hours, 3 times a week, that's unrealistic. And the material that we talked about was inappropriate. I mean, there's things that I remember some of the Awake magazine or Watchtower magazines that were about sex and even suicide, things that should not be talked about in front of kids or even given the ideas. Because I remember as a kid, well, why would anybody kill themselves? And you put these in their minds, so they're thinking about this all the time. And then even if you are a little ornery and wanting to do something bad because you're mad at your parents or something, and you're trying to pick out ideas of what to do ornery, these are the things that they're putting into your mind that you wouldn't have necessarily thought about as a kid. And the pictures, because we would spend hours just looking at the pictures, those would just stay in our minds. And I do notice now, like with my husband, in August, I was having a hard time just processing some of the broadcasting that I saw on JW.org, and I had asked my husband to watch one of the broadcasting with me. The way he saw it and the way I saw it were two completely different scenarios. First of all, he had a hard time staying awake. He was very in that hypnotic kind of lucid dream state, whereas I am seeing stories, like vivid stories on what to do. And I had noticed when they say certain words, I'm affected different ways. And I had
like
noticed this. Yeah, trigger words. And I noticed this with music. You have words that maybe get you amped up and different frequencies. And I've looked into some of this stuff, and some of those words go along with other programming that isn't just in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So when we compared how he took in the information based on how I took the information in, our minds are very, very different. And I am a very illustrated thinker, and all of those things that I was taught as a child come back. So like the fire-breathing dragons, the earth, or the Armageddon with fire coming down all the time, the four horsemen,
people falling into the ground, into the being swallowed into the. That's a vivid one for me. I remember that one.
And those start from your childhood, so that's your foundation. Those are your core memories that you pull off of. It's what you come back to. And so I've really been digging deep into why are these certain things. Why does this particular word give me this kind of image? Why does it hurt my stomach? Or why does it affect my heart? Why does it make me agitated? It's kind of set me on some pretty amazing information, research. I've even got, like, it's taken me to Yale and some of their studies that they've had and on obedience and how it's all just with how you put pictures in somebody's mind and how you can manipulate those pictures to create feelings and emotions that drive
mental conditioning. Yep, mental conditioning. It's, and a lot of what you said perfectly, I mean, really perfectly describes what it's like for people growing up as a witness. I mean, those images, the guilt, the shame. I mean, like you said, those images are your foundation. You know, my book of Bible stories, some of the things that are that they show in there.
Yeah,
you shouldn't be showing that to a toddler.
No.
Showing murder. I mean, just crazy images.
And they encourage you to have to become an allegory. So they give you who to become. So when you look at Dinah, that's who you strive to be. Or if, like, whenever I reported abuse, I was the Jezebel, even though they were 20 and 30-year-old brothers. That puts you in kind of a box. And when your personality is too big for those boxes, it makes it really kind of hard to figure out who you are, because you can only be Mary or you can only be Sarah. And then if you don't fit into those, who are you? And so that kind of the way that I learned and how to be myself, that took a little bit of time, because in my 20s, which we're not there yet, but in my 20s, that caused some alter ego personality kind of things, just because I didn't know who I was, and I didn't like who I was the life I was living. And so, but the life I wanted to live, I couldn't be at peace with. So I had to kind of separate or compartmentalize my life. I had my at-home life, I had my school life, I had my going out life. They were all three different people, even though they were myself. Each one of them, I was a different person. So
I think everything you're saying is perfectly describing what a lot of witnesses feel. I think there's a lot of people that are going to watch this, and you're putting into words a lot of things that they have felt that they could never put into words. But you mentioned the abuse, so let's go forward in time into your adolescent years, and getting into puberty. That's a very, very tough time for many witnesses out there. So what was that period of time like for you? 12 years old up to your late teens.
Okay, so puberty time, that was about the time that, well, I was going into the Young People Ask book, and the first time I had ever heard of masturbation. And we went into also, well, Dinah was a big, big part of that adolescent time. And I think that's the coming of age, whenever you are finding about your sexuality and who you are, and who you want to be. I wanted to fit in at that time. I was trying really hard to just find a social thing. I couldn't make friends out in the world, so I really wanted to put my energy into the congregation and doing what is right. So I went full force. My parents ended up moving. Let me back up just a little bit before we moved. I'm going to go right into the abuse. So when I was about 12 years old, I was sexually abused by a brother. And I had told a teacher at school, and nothing really came of it, other than my mom did tell me something that really kind of stuck with me. And I don't want this to go back on judgment of her, because she is a victim too. But when I had told, she had said, I don't know why you brought the world into this, because every child goes through this. And that just kind of really struck me hard. And I understood that my mom was not going to be somebody that I could go to or trust, because she had the organization's well-being in mind at all times, Jehovah's well-being versus mine. And we ended up moving from school, from that school district to another school district. So all of that was dropped. And then after we moved, I had reported being abused again to a school teacher. And this time, because I was in a new school district, they had done something about it. And CPS was called and the police were called. I ended up having to get a lawyer, and I had to forced counseling, which I absolutely did not want to do. I was very much opposed to that. And they were going to put me in foster care, but they opted not to. They got me a guardian ad litem, and they came in and checked in on me all the time. And the whole process was taking about a year. So I don't know how I got off on that.
Oh no, you're good. And this is also around the time that you got baptized too.
Yes.
So that made it an even bigger deal,
Yeah. So when we moved, because I was having such a hard time, right before we moved, that summer before we moved, I got baptized because I had reported it to teachers. That was nothing had happened, but I thought that Satan was putting a lot of pressure on our family, and the sexual abuse happened because Satan was really targeting our family. If I got baptized, I felt like we were going to have an extra protection, and Jehovah was going to see that my heart was really in it. So the baptism was right in between, reporting it between my first school and my second school. And then when I reported it to the second school, people got involved, and then the elders were involved because we were going to court and stuff. So they had decided, instead of supporting me, they publicly reproved me for gossip and slander. And then the brother was privately reproved. And my friends completely pulled away. I had just gotten baptized. Like, I was like really just brand new, like, come and love me. And they all disappeared, except for one brother that came in, and he was a ministerial servant. I had watched his daughter over the summertime, and he was 23 at the time, and I ended up having sex during this court process. I was in love.
How old were you at that time?
I was 14 when that first happened. I was in love with a boy in the congregation. His name was Sean. Oh, yeah. I was in love with this other boy in the congregation, and he would stand at the back of the Kingdom Hall waiting for me, and we'd talk. And one time he touched my knee. It was just so romantic. And we went to a wedding. One of the brothers' sisters got married, and the 24 or 23-year-old brother had asked me if I could supervise him on a date. I was the chaperone, and I'm like, yeah, I can go do that. So after we dropped her, after we dropped her off at her house, he took me to a mall parking lot and made huge advances at me. Like, he was kissing me and groping me, and I was really embarrassed, and I didn't know how to get out of the situation. And well, I told him, I reminded him that I was still in love with this boy, and that I didn't want to get in trouble, and that we needed to go home. And I came home, and I just cried, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell my parents, because I'm going to court for this other brother, this 30-something-year-old brother touching me. And then I'm going to be coming in and saying that this other brother touched me. I did not know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. The brother would come over and help with homework, and so he was around for quite some time. I tried to keep the space and distance, but even like whenever I would go and babysit, he would still come over to even other people's houses and come and see me. And I talked to one of the women in the congregation, and she had told me if I don't tell, that she was going to tell about the fornication. And so I told this brother that I was going to have to tell, and he said, well, why don't we go get married? That's when I decided to take my birth certificate, erase the last date, or the last day number on my date of birth, and then use a typewriter and fill it in. We went to Reno, and this is why laws and rules matter so much. Just because Idaho has a age limit at 18, there's some states that you can still get married at 10 years old. And so when we vote and we put rules into effect, or laws into effect, these are things that we need to think about as a society. Do we want our 10-year-olds getting married? And even if it's not okay in one state, if we can traffic them to another and marry them off, are we okay with that? Are we going to stay silent about that? But we did. We got married, and then I came back home, and I didn't tell anybody until I showed up for court to testify against this brother. And I had showed my lawyer my marriage certificate, and the look on the CPS lady, the child CPS, Child Protective Service lady. She had spent all of that time to get me out of the situation. She just looked heartbroken and angry. And she told me that if I don't testify, I'm going to regret it later. And oh, the lawyer was mad at me. You could just see the hurt and disappointment on everybody's faces. Just, I don't know, but I just let it happen. And it was over. Like, I didn't have to testify against the brother. The elders disfellowshipped me because I had sex outside of marriage. And then I had no friends, no family. My husband moved me off to another city. It was about an hour and a half away, and I had just gotten my driver's license, and so I didn't even know how to drive. And to go from an hour away, that was it. I was trapped. So
Yeah, let's just back up a little bit, because this is such a big situation that really shows some of the issues that, again, are normalized in the organization. So here you already went through abuse. The first time, the brother that did it was privately reproved. You were publicly reproved. The congregation, for anybody out there that says these are bad people, not a bad organization, look at this is a perfect example of how the organization enables this behavior. Why, if the organization knew about this abuse, why was the brother just privately reproved? Why did she get any discipline at all? He should have went off to be reported to the authorities. In the second case, you were 15 at that point, right? The
yeah,
sister that you told was more concerned about sex before marriage than the fact that this 27-year-old is grooming a 15-year-old. That should have been the top of her list.
yeah,
This is, I had a video I'm working on. I need to get it released, but the topic is about just morality versus reality. And this is the kind of situations that you see where the witnesses are so wrapped up in their moral superiority that they end up doing more bad than good. This lady was so concerned about you having sex before marriage that she didn't consider that you were being groomed by. I mean, that should have been, again, the top of her list.
yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, what was going through your head? What were you going through during this point? Did that ever cross your mind that you were
Yeah, I was
being
feeling
wronged here?
I was feeling very angry. I was very confused because they read me the scriptures, and I was like, well, wait a minute. Aren't I telling the truth? Aren't I doing this? And then it would be like, well, yeah, but you're bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. I was still in the wrong how I handled it. And there were things like one of the brothers had said that, well, if you don't squeal like a pig, it does not count as rape. It counts as consent. And so that there held me back too, because I'm like, well, maybe I'm putting something out there, or because I was still learning about sexuality, because it started when I was 12. It was 12 through 15. So like I didn't know anything about being a woman. And so I thought, well, maybe I was, what did they call me once? A fox or a minx. I was called a minx. And so it was really hard because I didn't know hugs. I got counseled for hugs. I didn't know where the lines were. Like, if I hugged a brother, was that just giving an elderly person comfort, or was that me coming on to them? And I didn't know how those lines got crossed, but all of a sudden, like everything that I had done was some kind of sexual vixen. So it was very confusing. And these people are telling me I have to be moral, yet it was these brothers, these grown men. They were not boys. They were not kids my age. We weren't just experimenting, when our parents weren't looking. These were grown men. One of them came down to school. He signed me out of school, forged a letter saying that I can come out. These were grown men using me, and I didn't understand why I got in more trouble than they did. And it made me really angry. And my attitude was very not humble anymore. And I think that was a big reason why they disfellowshipped me, because I was just thinking, you knew what I was going through, and yet you did nothing. And I didn't understand for a long time, like the hypersexuality that I went through after this. But I realize now just that it's part of it. Like if you are exposed to sex too early, it's the way that you process love and acceptance. And I don't know, it just messes with your mind, the whole how they did it. Cognitive dissonance, because I didn't know right from wrong. It was all mixed up. So
Yeah, I think once again you're saying a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of people are feeling, and they don't know how to put it into words. So yeah, and I mean, and the witnesses are already a very sexually repressive culture. You can't mature sexually in a healthy way in that type of culture.
no.
Then you add abuse on top of that. Yeah, it's no wonder that you experience that time of just hypersexuality, because your brain doesn't know how to deal with it.
And so
It's yeah,
later, like in my 20s, so I got married at 15. I was there for quite some time, and I ended up getting reinstated, but then the brother had moved me right away to another state, and I resented him and I hated him so much. I didn't know how to get out of it, and I was, I guess, kind of hopeless in a way. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but when he moved me, we were studying with some brothers and sisters, because I had just gotten reinstated and stuff, and I ended up trying to kill myself. It was not a thought. It was not premeditated. It was just an action. It was just something I did, like brushing my hair. I just took an entire bottle of sleeping pills, and I didn't understand why. I went on medication and I went into therapy. I was in intensive care for about 3 days, and then I went to an inpatient thing for 3 months. We only talked about the abuse. We didn't talk about the organization. I was still very, very protective of that. And we didn't talk about really my husband at the time, or why. But I was angry at my husband. So I ended up having affairs and self-sabotage. I was really self-destructive, and anything I could do to hurt him as much as he hurt me, I ended up doing. I ended up not liking myself because of who I was to him. So that's when I decided to get a divorce, was because I wanted to be able to like myself and my kids to like me. So I always thought my story was isolated. Like it was just the brothers in our congregation, that they were just not following Jehovah's ways. But then I found out thousands and thousands of girls had the same stories, that they were sexually abused. Lots of them had young marriages, and the suicide rates were so high. And I didn't realize that they do, not necessarily them, but there are self-destructive programs that that other things used. If you go back through their articles, like in 1988, some of those things, if you put it through ChatGPT, it'll tell you that it's a an omega programming technique that they use for self-destruction. So I found that kind of fascinating, and ChatGPT has been like a huge resource to find out when I punch in articles, what are the hidden messages and things that they're programming that we don't necessarily see, and it'll tell you what kind of programming it is. So but it
you
was
should just so people understand, your brain has different like wave states. So
mhm,
delta, alpha, and these states kind of range from like positive, happy, good feeling states, and negative, down, depressing sort of states.
right.
And so what she's describing is that you can literally put these articles, into the AI, and it will tell you that a lot of these articles, just in terms of the content and the overall direction of it, it's putting you in a negative, lower state of mind.
Right. I don't know if you know much about Tesla or even Albert Einstein. He had a theory with somebody else all about frequencies that crystals carry, words carry. Dr. Ogdemoto, he does the sound frequencies.
Oh, the water?
Yes, the water.
Yeah. So we should probably explain that too, just because this is a lot of stuff that you don't see when you're a witness. They because you're under that information control,
Yeah.
So you don't know about this stuff. But so
Dr.
yeah, I know who you're.
What is his name?
You want to try to pronounce it?
Yeah,
Hashimoto or something like that.
Hashimoto, yes. So
Yeah,
Dr. Hashimoto, he talks about water and the frequencies and how they affect your body. A good word can create different crystals or make the crystals move in a certain way when it comes to water. The same thing happens to our bodies because we are mostly water, but we also have like crystal makeups. Like if you're not drinking enough, you'll get calcium buildups in your bodies. It's the same thing. So they talk about.
You know what's funny? I think in one of the Awake magazines, they actually had that guy. And they showed
really?
how the different words, saying I love you, or saying I hate, whatever words impact the water, the structure, what is it, the molecular structure of the water crystals. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that in one of the ways before I left. So it's just kind of funny that it's, they talk about it, but they're doing the negative part of it. Where do we leave off with your story? You had gotten divorced, and then
that was hard to get divorced because I was scared to disappoint my parents. Also, I really didn't want to disappoint Jehovah, but we had started celebrating holidays, so we were not. After I was reinstated, I came back. I moved to Indiana, and I had tried to kill myself, and I had been reinstated. I went into meetings. I just could not find the love again at all. Like I had a really, really hard time. We didn't celebrate holidays until my oldest was in 6th grade and my youngest was 2. And when I celebrated my first Christmas, I'm like, I'm going to die anyway. So there's no reason for me to stay married. So I asked for a divorce and he said yes. And my mom, we were married for 15 years. So 14 years. My mom said it was about time. I was really surprised. Like, she's like, it is about time. And even though I was single and alone, that was the first time I had not felt lonely. I was so lonely for all that time. And then I went on a vacation and on a trip with a friend. It was my very first one out of the country, and it was a really big deal. I met all kinds of different people. I had met a guy that was a chiropractor to dolphins. Like, what kind of job is that? But these were amazing people that just spent their life traveling and doing things, and I wanted that. And I came home and told my husband that, I'm ready for a new life. I'm ready to be somebody. And he was okay with what it was. And that was another big reason why I had left, is I was just ready for change. And I had met another man. I told him about my first traveling trips, but he didn't know me from anyone else. He just knew that I traveled and he thought I was fascinating. And I just thought, I really want somebody to look at me the way he looks at me, like I had value. And I wanted to be a person of value. Like, these people that I met, they were all just so interesting. And I was just always had my curtains closed and depressed. And I was a shell of a person. I was just nobody and just waiting to fit into another allegory. And
do you feel that as a witness, being a witness as a woman, do you feel it's hard to get to a point where you can feel like you have value? Because it's so based off of your husband,
Yeah, because my value was always based on my husband. Whatever my husband was doing, if he thought I had worth. And also, like, I still had my parents not wanting me to, my dad, not wanting me to be too bold, because you got to be submissive to be a witness female. But I couldn't be that way anymore, because if I wanted to have the life that I felt like I could gain, I had to do it myself. I could not count on anybody else. If I had to ask for my life, then it was how they interpreted it. So I really needed the independence and the strength, and to become a business owner. And that is definitely out of character for a submissive female. So yes, I had a lot of things to overcome, and how I saw the world and how I interpreted the world. When I started, I had a really hard time talking to parents or clients. I was so scared. Any conflict that would come up, there was no way that I could even talk to them. I would cry before I talked to them. And then I took classes, I got confidence, I got contracts, I became a professional. There was no more tears. This is just the job. This is how you do it. I think I got more in touch with my, I don't know if it's masculine side, but it was definitely my ability to take care of myself. So, and that led to like amazing things, a lot of growth. It wasn't super easy. There was a lot to overcome. There were a lot of days that I did not think I could do it. But I learned a lot about myself, and I didn't need a man, even though I did get remarried to a man that is so supportive, but he never ever puts any kind of pressure on me to be any way. He's a worldly man, but like, he just wants me to be me, and he smiles and he's proud of me, and he doesn't have to tell me that he's proud of me. He just, I don't know anything that I do. And that really helped a lot, because nobody ever was really that proud of me. And nobody can be proud of you when you're like going to school. That didn't make my parents very proud. When you're putting your career first, that was nothing to be proud of, because it's always kingdom ministry. It's never about improving yourself. It's how much time do you put out in service. And so this was a time that, like, my value was not based on how much I put out there. My value was on what I created. And Disney and Dolly Parton are some of my favorite people, because they create these realities and they're able to bring you into these realities. And I've been fortunate in my life, not to that extreme. It's not like I have an amusement park or anything, but my life was built around creating these little kind of realities. And so I enjoyed that. It brought out a side of me that brought me to life and gave me desire, or the oomph to keep going, the motivation, the drive.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that, because you have this daycare business that, as a witness, you weren't really able to grow, but then you leave, and what happens?
Okay, so my first, like at the very beginning, it was just I was young, so I started at 15 years old. I just put the kids in front of the TV. Like, I'd have 5 kids and we'd watch PBS and then play. It was just Kool-Aid and stuff like that. It wasn't, I just babysat. That's all I did. And then when I left my husband, I had to make it professional. Like, I needed a better source of income. So I needed to get licensed. And when I got licensed, that required classes and certificates. And then once I got those classes, I learned that we don't put kids in front of the TV, that those frequencies are really, really bad for their brains, and that you do need to stimulate them. And I learned things. At first, like, I'm like, how do you like control kids without firm discipline? And then you've got that whole positive reinforcement, and that's very much what we did. And then with school, I ended up getting employees, and then more employees, more kids, and we did really, really well. They were learning, the teachers were all learning, because they were just PBS moms too. But we took the classes, and we ended up growing another daycare, and then another daycare, and that was really good. It was an exciting time. I was learning a lot. The kids were always so excited and engaged. It was so different compared to like when I first started. My kids were like bored or whatever, unless we had something planned. But then, as I grew, and our program was rated, it was rated Paths to Quality Level 4, which was the highest rating. And to me, that was a really big deal because it was like an award, a trophy, like, oh, you've made it this far, you've accomplished your goals. And it did so well. Like the kids were so, I don't know. It was a good time. It was a good period in my life. It was a good period. I was raising teenagers during that time. That was the hardest part, was raising the teenagers. So I thought, like, being a mom, oh, that's the easiest thing in the whole entire world. I loved it until the teenage years. I did not know if I was going to survive that. And unfortunately for the girls, I was deconstructing at that time, and I did not realize that I was deconstructing. But I had a really hard time with my ex-husband because I hated him so much. I realized when my daughter had turned 12, and she was so mature. And I'm like, how on earth could anybody be attracted to her unless you were like a teenage kid? That it made me so angry, and I realized what it was. And
Yeah.
I could no longer pretend that it was out of love or anything other than what it was. And that made it really hard on the girls because they loved their dad, and their dad was good to them. But I was immature, emotionally stunted, and I don't know. I wasn't always that nice to him. So they had a hard time. And I wish I would have gotten the help that I needed when I was a teenager instead of coming through this when I had other people underneath me. So,
But at least you made it through. Glad you made it through.
yeah, and they did too. My girls are good, and my oldest is well, she's going to school to become a nurse practitioner. She is a nurse right now, and she's been doing that she's 28 years old now, so she's been doing it for the last 10 years. And my youngest is finishing. She's going to school for child psychology, so for trauma, which I'm really excited about. So I'm hoping that she's going to help something with some of this trauma-based programming that is going on. So, because
that is awesome.
I do feel like that is very much what a Jehovah's Witness goes through, is a trauma-based programming. Just because, well, of my experience, I experienced child sexual abuse, and then I was cut off. I was the one who was punished, and that messes with your mind a little bit. So
yeah,
process
for sure.
the world.
For sure, yeah,
So,
and just your concept of what's right and wrong. I mean, really, and it shows the gender dynamic, which where men can get away with more, and it's usually blamed on the woman. And then, and another thing that story shows with the gender dynamic is just the, like you said, when you got divorced, you suddenly had to figure out how to make your business into like an actual business, because a lot of times women are, taught to just, that they can just depend on their husband, be a pioneer, depend on your husband. They're not really taught to be, how to be able just to take care of themselves, so they don't have to be dependent a lot of times. And then they're stuck. Then they're even more stuck.
That kept me stuck for a long time. I didn't leave my ex-husband for so long because I didn't know what to do. I had finished high school myself, so I did get my GED, not my GED. I got my high school diploma, but it was all homeschooled, so I taught myself. And at that time, I didn't have a college degree, and how was I going to make it on my own with 2 kids? And I had no experience. So that was really scary for me. But at that time, I was done. It didn't matter. If I didn't make it, I didn't make it. So,
Yeah. You just feel, because they had just put you that low. Yeah, where you just don't care anymore. I
yeah, there
get it.
was
I
no
get it.
point in life. Like you're just existing to give him his dream, and I was nobody. So I don't know.
So let's fast forward a little bit. So how did you end up waking up from the Jehovah's Witnesses then? Because you had left, you gotten divorced, but you were still under their
Yeah.
construction. So how did you wake up?
So I was still feeling like this was the truth, all the way up until 2017, 2018, whenever the redress scheme, the Australian redress scheme came out. And I was watching the trials and hearing some of those things as it was going on. Then I knew that this was not just me, that this happens, that this is the norm in the organization, and that it's not okay. And so I had called my brother and told him about these Australian redress scheme. And I was excited because I really thought like they were going to make changes in the organization, and this was just Jehovah's way to bring it all out. And he stopped. He didn't argue with me or anything. He acknowledged that I was sexually abused by 2 Jehovah's Witnesses, and that he's been watching the redress schemes, but he just stopped talking to me completely. He wouldn't return phone calls, and this has been quite a few years. So the redress scheme is what really, really opened my eyes to everything that was going on. So
Yeah, I think it woke up a lot of people. And I can imagine, I mean, if it had such a big deal on me that it woke me up and I didn't go through that experience, I can only imagine how much it would hit hard if you went through abuse yourself. And then you're seeing that, this is a worldwide issue. It's been going on for a long time. Yeah.
So I had a lot of questions, especially recently, like why are there so many Jehovah's Witnesses that do sexually abuse, and why are so many women like my mom that don't tell? Because even like one of the elders, I forgot his name, he was one of the big ones that spoke out. His daughter was sexually abused, and he didn't report it for like 10 years. And then he was the brother that had sexually abused his daughter abused somebody else, and then that's when he finally got involved. And then the elders said that he was an apostate. I don't know if you remember that story, but I didn't understand why so much was going on. And then I started going through the literature, like, is there something in there? And they do. Like, at the time that I was growing up, I had found some articles about self-abuse, and they put visual illustrations in about a fretful baby and soothing them by frigorously rubbing their genitals. Why would you do that? And these are the things that they put everywhere. They're just sprinkled, and they're normally like hidden in a really long paragraph towards, not at the end, but kind of long enough for you to get bored and not really pay attention, just skim over, except for some people who will still pay attention. I went to my mom and told her my concern, and told her that I felt like this was poisoning my family. Like these words, putting these visual illustrations in my nephew's mind that doesn't have kids yet, but he will. These aren't things that they should be hearing, or that they should even be like putting in their mind at all, because they'll carry this on into adulthood, and they don't know where they get the contents or even remember where they got it from. It's just in them. So I didn't understand why my mom would keep giving my dad poison, and so that's where a lot of this, I don't know, the deep diving that I'm going into kind of brings things out. So I don't know if you want me to go into this or not, but if you do ever look into the August broadcasting of 2023, it's amazing to even see, like, at the very end where they They say that the Magdeburg printing facility was confiscated, infiltrated by the Nazis. Everything was burned and destroyed. Then, after the Nazis had the possession of the building, they replaced, or they sent out new translations of this New World Bible underneath the Nazi regimes. And then from there, that's after that was in 1934. That's we stopped celebrating holidays. That's when disfellowshipping came in. Huge policy changes happened in the organization right after that time. And when you go back to those 1934, in particularly in the August broadcasting, they talk about things that were going on in the country at that time. And they were doing a lot of experiments and obedience experiments on people. And again, if you put this stuff in ChatGPT, it'll break it down and tell you the common words, the things that they're doing to that relate to both of those things, to the Nazis taking over and the programming. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a no. You said that perfectly. Yeah, and for people that don't know what she's alluding to, well, I mean, I'm not sure how you could be awake and not realize just the layers. I mean, thick layers of mental conditioning that the Watchtower is using and behavior control. I mean, we can do a whole series of videos just going into that. I mean, and it's some of it goes really, really, really deep, and you don't realize how deep it's going. A lot of it is going right over your head, and you don't even realize that you're seeing it. I mean, just like we talked about at the beginning, you're a child, you're seeing all these vivid pictures. That stuff creates your foundation. So yeah, I would definitely encourage people to look into that stuff and to watch some of these broadcasts that she's talking about, because there is stuff that's in there that has an impact on you. Maybe you don't realize that it does, but it really does, and it's part of what keeps people in a lot of times, is that subconscious programming drives so much of just how your brain works that, again, you can't even blame some of these people for being so stuck in, because they're not thinking for themselves. All you can do is just have empathy for them. So
there was another science experiment done, a psychology experiment done in Yale. I forgot the professor's name, but they made a movie out of it. Winona Ryder is in it, and Jim Gaffner. There's lots of big names in it. It's The Experimenter, and it came out in 2015, The Experimenter. And it was about what people would do, it was shocking another person, and what would make that person stop if they were told. It was just a really good thing, how far people will go to be obedient. And in that test, 70% of people shocked all the way up until the person stopped screaming and yelling. Only 30% stopped the experiment completely, and most of those are the ones that had already experienced that kind of trauma, the shock, and they did not want to put another person through it. But it was amazing to see how many people went through with it, even though they knew the other person was hurting. And they had the experimenter. There's actually people. There's several players and everything. And if you even think at the Lord's Supper, you have Jesus, you have the apostles, and then you have the watchers. And the experimenter is about 4 people. You've got the teacher, the learner, the narrator, and the watchers. And the teachers wanted to impress the watchers, even though they gained nothing out of it. It was just inside, they just wanted to impress them. And so they kept on going, despite knowing that it hurt the other people. And I feel like it's the same thing in the organization. Sometimes maybe that they're seeing, what are you going to do? Like, if we do this, What are you going to do? How are you going to react? Will you keep doing it? Will you keep taking this? Will you keep turning your blind eye to kids getting molested and blaming them for it? What is going to make you stand up and do something? And I don't know. That's how I took the movie anyway, was, I've been hurt and traumatized. Am I going to keep on shocking somebody, or am I going to say something about it? So
Yeah. And what you're talking about is group psychology. That the organization uses that a lot. You can impact a group of people differently than you can impact individual people. Sometimes people will go along with things as a group that they wouldn't go along with as individuals. Sometimes people will go along with things when they're being watched that they wouldn't go along with if there was no audience. And again, goes back to what you were just talking about, how there's a lot of behavior control things and mental conditioning that is influenced throughout just how the organization runs, and it really has an impact on people. But so let's ask the last question.
Okay.
So, what advice would you've been out for a while now? You have built a successful business for yourself. I mean, you've done good. I mean, despite all the abuse that you went through, you have really come out, on top, and that's what people should hope for, to come out on top. So, what advice would you have for people that are just waking up now, people that have been through abuse, people that are being shunned? What advice would you have for them?
Listen to your gut. Like if something doesn't feel right, speak up, because if you don't, nobody else will. And in a way, if you don't say something, it is consenting to it, because you're not stopping the behavior. Don't be afraid. Be bold. Go do your life. It's okay to be silly. It's okay to make mistakes. And when you do make mistakes, people like it. Like, I mean, I have a lot of failures and I have a lot of successes, and my failures make it so people relate to me, because if they're struggling and they're having a hard time, and they see that I struggled, didn't make it, but then I kept up on it, it encourages other people. And sometimes if I take one step, it may not seem like very, very much, but if I keep on going, it adds up. Everything I do adds up. And just keep going. Just be bold, and don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of yourself. And it's success. I think being afraid of success kind of holds you back sometimes, because what are you going to do once you get there? Can I handle it all? That sometimes held me back a little bit of whether I was enough to be able to do it. But you're enough. Just by being here, you are enough. And this should be the life that you want, because you don't know what's going to happen. You do not know if there is going to be a paradise on earth. The only thing you absolutely know is you have right now. So just live it, and dance, like sing, be silly, be authentically real, and you'll enjoy life. So I don't know. I've had some pretty awesome experiences, just not being afraid of other people and not being afraid of myself. And travel. Oh, if you get the opportunity, travel as much as you can. That changes who you are. It changes how you see the world. It changes how you taste things. And it gives you confidence that you would never have before, especially if you're a woman. Travel alone and with others, but do it. Just see the world. You're only here once. So
That's a perfect response. I have one more question for you. I lied. Apostates lie, right? So one more question for you. Just because you did have so much success with your business, and as witnesses, we were taught to keep ourselves low. To not strive for any big monetary gain, not strive for any earthly success. So a lot of times people do self-sabotage. They'll get to a certain level where they're comfortable, because that's what we were told to do. Get to where you're comfortable, where you can sustain yourself, and that's it. Don't go beyond that. So how did you what went on in your head? How did you get to a point where you're able to get past that that wall and
You
just
know,
allow yourself to go for it?
I still have to talk to myself because I have to have a reason for money. I can't just have it. There has to be a goal and a reason, and it's probably just the way I am. Um, I got over things because I saw purpose for my dreams. Having $1 million in the bank isn't because of some financial mark or anything. It's actually it's never mine. It passes through me, and so it's not. It's an ends to a means. So I need that to take care of my next goal. It isn't just to have in the bank. It's to do something with it. Even the things I own or the things I possess are never mine just for no reason. It all has purpose and meaning. And so for me, having money, it wasn't a selfish gain. It wasn't because I'm living in a life of luxury. It's because that money goes to something else and it builds something else. And so if I take that money and I travel, that's building me. I know it's selfishness. I don't know if it's selfishness or not, but that's the life I wanted to live, and I have those goals, and money is the way to get it. It's freedom. It's the way to access that. And it doesn't even have to be money, but money was something that I found I can control. It was receipts, a tangible thing that I could see. It was a lot easier for me. But there's other ways to do it. Success isn't necessarily money, but I got over it just by having a reason and a purpose for it. And I felt like I deserved it too. And I feel like God wants me to have it. I feel like he wants me to see the world, because why would he put that curiosity in me if he didn't want me to go see the pyramids? Why would he put that curiosity in me if he didn't want me to go pray with the Buddhist monks? Why would I have that desire? So I think he gives me those things for opportunities to fulfill those desires. So I don't know.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And once again, you're saying things that people are thinking, but they, may have not put into words. Just the fact that you have these desires. So why do you have them if you're not supposed to fulfill them? That those things are out there for a reason. And if you have that drive to go see them, by all means, you should be able to. But you might find something out there that you needed to find. And then, but the other thing that you said that's really, really important is just about deserving it. There's a lot of, especially coming out of a high control group like the Witnesses, that kept you so down. A lot of people feel like they don't deserve it. They don't deserve, something better for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if that's what you want for yourself, you should be able to go for it. If you can do it in a healthy way.
I do believe the scriptures when they say that anything that you want, just ask for. You have to put out there what you want for it to come back. And if you just keep it up, it will come to you. It just does. So what you put out there, you will get back. There's always failures, but those are okay. Those are not failures. I don't even think of them as failures. They're just growing moments. They're like, oh, yeah, I know what to do next time. So, yeah. So.
I fully agree. Yeah, don't be afraid to fail. Just learn how to fail forward. You learn how to do that, you're always going to go forward. So that's another thing as Witnesses. This idea about always being perfect, it makes you so afraid of failure. I live with a huge thing of perfection. That's something I'm still working on.
You get if you're afraid to fail, you're afraid to take those moves, because what if I do it wrong? And there's lots of times I've been like a deer in headlights where I was afraid to move forward or afraid to go. When I quit my career, my 25-year career, at the top of my game, I was really scared to do that. And for the last 3 years, I've been in transitioning mode, trying to figure things out, meditating, seeing what comes to me. And I'm at the start this next year of really putting a new career together, a new trajectory in life, and I'm so excited about it. It's starting over from the ground up. But I think when I was building my daycares, that was like the most exciting part. It was building the next one and the next one, getting what rules, what codes I had to, certificates I had to get, whatever things, the checklists, I like those. And then having a vision and a dream and being able to put those out and have other people help build on it, that was kind of amazing. And so now with this new journey, Joe and Fran, I don't know if you know them from the XJW community, they put me in touch with Shauna, and so we are building a whole holistic program we'll be working on in the next year, and it'll have frequencies and meditation and just how to live a good life, farm to table food, but it's all a work in progress, but it's here, like it's all there, it's tangible, and we've got another person on our team, so a year from now it should be going from, I don't know, it should be going good. I'm on a 3-year plan, and then a 5-year plan, and then a 10-year exit plan. So
That sounds awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, and
thank you.
We'll have plenty more to talk about in the future.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Thanks again to Jen for coming on and being willing to share your story, especially a story like that has, talks about abuse that you went through as a child. I'm sure some of that stuff can be really traumatic to talk about. But one thing's for sure, you definitely show your strength. Despite going through all that stuff, you've really come out on top. And you had a chance to tell me some of the other things that you're working on in the future. And it really just goes to show, once you are allowed to actually step into your strength, step into your power, you will be amazed at the things that you can do. So hopefully that gives encouragement to the rest of you out there who are still going through this process of waking up. Maybe you're not quite sure what's going to happen to you when you leave. Well, it's going to be completely up to you. And that can be a very, very good thing. If you allow yourself to go as high as you can go, you might be surprised where you end up. So once again, thank you so much, Jennifer, for putting out your story. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people out there. Thank you all out there for watching. Thank you for your time. Take it easy on yourself, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.